Hello, welcome to Manthano Parenting Conference. And I'd like to welcome two of my dear friends, Andrea and Jon. You welcome. It's lovely, lovely to meet you. Actually, this is my first time meeting them, and I was just saying how excited I am. I've listened to various sessions where they've spoken, especially your TEDx talk. That was amazing.
Oh,
So
bless
you're
you.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really
Great to be here.
a great pleasure to
Thanks,
be here. Really looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, so am I. So my name is Karen Oroma, and I'm the CEO of Manthano. And like I said, we've got Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, and they are the co-founders of 4Habits Consulting and the UK registered charity Soulmates Academy Foundation. They have a vision of equipping everyone to do relationships well, working with both couples and individuals across companies, local communities, colleges, and universities. Andrea and Jon are recognized authorities on the subjects of relationships and marriage, with numerous public speaking engagements, TV and radio appearances. Their TEDx talk on the 4 habits of all successful relationships continues to resonate very strongly with over 1.8 million views to date. Andrea and Jon have been married for 28 years and have 2 teenage children who keep accountable for the relationship advice they teach. They're
That we
here,
do. That we do.
they're here to discuss their new book, which will be out in very soon. The 4 habits
days.
of
Yeah, exactly. Next
all
week.
the 4 habits of all successful relationships pertaining to parenting. So you're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome once
Thank
Thank
you.
again.
you. Thanks,
Great
Karen.
to
Great
be
to be here.
here. Great to be
Yeah.
here.
And I like to start with really what inspired you to write this book?
That's a great question. I think it's something that's been on our hearts for a long time. We've
Mm.
been working in relationship education for over 25 years because of our own personal challenges. When we just started, we dared to start a business early in our marriage and bumped up against our differences and didn't really like each other. And it was a tough time. And some of the things that we learned then were so simple but profound. They made such a difference to our relationship that we thought, why weren't we taught this beforehand? And how do we get it out to everybody to help everybody get over the common hurdles that relationships face, isn't it?
I would say we wrote the book not because there's a gap out there. There's a need for it. Not a sort of a gap in the market that we're trying to capture, but there is a basic lack of education and relationship space out there in terms of proactive, what can I do about my relationships? The way we look at it, we say, look, all relationships, and we recognize this in ourselves, looking around us, talking to people, all relationships face a certain set of hurdles and challenges. And actually, a lot of the hurdles and challenges are not dissimilar. That we're all facing these hurdles and challenges. We don't know how to do them. But success in relationships comes from getting over those hurdles. I love the analogy of a sprinter on a track. When he goes down into the blocks and the gun goes and he looks up, he sees the hurdles and off he goes down the track, or she goes down the track to this finish line. But success getting to the finish line is all about being prepared to get over those hurdles. In relationship land, those hurdles are there. We don't see them until we start to hit them. And you hit another one, you go, whoa, this is too much for me. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So it's about being prepared to get over those hurdles. And so we wrote the book really to say, these hurdles are out there, people. You want to recognize them. And as we start in the book, we talk about some of the hurdles and people look at them and go, oh yeah, that is what I'm experiencing. So, okay, given that, well, this is what you need to do. This is how you get over these challenges if you want to get to the finish line.
And that's the important point, because we experience some of these challenges in our marriage and in our business as business partners, and we realize that the challenges are so fundamental just to human nature and to relationships that they're as relevant to couples as they are to parents with child. They're as relevant in the workplace, in home, in life in general. It's just the fundamentals of how do we learn to do relationships well. So we thought about all the people, couples, individuals, colleagues that we've spoken with over the years through relationship challenges and discussing how to deal with it. We thought about the things that we wanted to pass on to our children and our loved ones to help them have better relationships. And then the great opportunity that we had with the TEDx is that all this information and experience that we've been working with and amassing over the 25 years, we were forced to condense into 15 minutes. And that helped us to crystallize the 4 fundamental habits and how do you do them, how do you develop them so that we can be proactive about building great relationships on purpose. And that's what we poured into the book to just help get the equipping out there so that people can go on to take responsibility really for their own level of relationship skills and learn to do relationships better.
And just to very quickly add to that, and it's about helping people change behaviors, because we're all doing things that are sometimes not landing so well. None of us go into relationships looking to have a miserable time. You don't want to have a miserable time with your children, with your partner, with your colleagues, whatever. We want to have a good relationship, but there are things that we're doing to each other that are not working so well. So what we're saying is you want to identify what those things are, behaviors that you're doing, identify them and stop doing those, or at least if you can't stop, maybe at least minimize them. It's a gradual process until you get to stopping. But then find out what is it that I could be doing that is actually more positive, that would make a good difference here, and start doing that. So the book is all about helping people change behaviors, as we say, from habits that damage relationships to habits that strengthen them.
On purpose.
On purpose. Do that on purpose. If you do that, you've got a chance of having a good relationship. So it's all relationships, behavior change. And mindset change as well, I guess, for people to recognize it doesn't have to be this way. I could actually do something about my relationship. It's not great at the moment. I don't have to just, live through that or suck it and see, as they say, but I can actually do something with this relationship and move it on purpose forward.
And turn up better. We talk about equipping yourselves so you turn up better to the relationship as a parent, as a partner, as a colleague. You have a better conversation because you know how to do it better and you achieve better results. So that's really what the book's about, equipping people to turn up better, have better conversations, and achieve better results by learning the fundamentals of doing relationships well.
And if I could add one last thing to that, in terms of why we wrote the book, because we want to get the word out there as much as possible. We've been doing, for the last 25 years, we've been doing workshops and seminars and talks and so on, but that generally is a smaller audience. You can talk to, and even if there's 100 people in the room, that's interesting, but that's not mass market. And we'd like to get to mass market. I mean, the TEDx talk, as you say, was awesome. When we did it, we were hoping for 3,000, maybe 5,000 views would have been great. To see it now at, almost 1.9 million views, I think by this weekend it might hit that, God willing, has just been awesome. But that's the kind of impact we're trying to get. We're trying to get this message out, across the world if we can. Let people recognize there is something they can be doing to improve their skills. Get it into schools, get it into colleges, universities, get people, as early as possible, recognizing that they can do something about it, learning the skills, moving their relationship forward. So that's why we wrote the book. Long answer to a short question.
But that leads me to the next question, where it says, what do you think then are the keys to raising godly and faith-believing children?
Always a great question. That's another great one. I think our first answer would be godly and faith-believing yourself. You have to walk the talk. Children will believe what's role modeled for them. So if you want to raise godly and faith-believing children, let that be who you are. And as you walk the talk, as life issues come up, in conversations with them, you can discuss it the world's way, God's way, and help them understand the difference. As you have concerns or challenges, if you pray together about things, they will see God proving faithful every time you've shared a concern that you've prayed together about, and kind of help them build the evidence of their faith. Because God doesn't have grandchildren, as we say. Our job is to teach them how to have that personal relationship with God through the finished work of Christ on the cross. They'll only do that if it's if it's who we are and what we're modeling in the way that we live. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And then the second
thing I would say is just stay as close to them as possible.
Yeah.
Connection. Absolutely. You've got to have that connection with them. You've got to have the opportunity to speak into their lives. And unless you're connected with them, you don't have that. As you know, when we talk about connection, most of our kids are super connected to the world, to their friends. There's so much opportunity to look at our children,
to Facebook,
exactly. If you look at our children, you look at their phones,
influences,
all the different apps that they have on their different phones, and they're constantly talking, chatting. I mean, they're not long conversations, but they're constantly in connection with a multitude of friends, people that they've never even met, with online social platforms and so on. It blows my mind to think how they can actually have boyfriends and girlfriends, never met them one day in the flesh, just an online relationship. And now all of a sudden, yes, it's my girlfriend. Really? How did
it's a different world.
It's a different world. These connections are all over the place. So we're saying, well, how can we have our connections with them to make sure that we are plugged into them? We are having the opportunity to speak into their lives, to understand what's going on in their lives, to have that opportunity of dialogue when they, something is troubling them. Okay, well, to be able to talk about it, because with a lot of teenagers, we ask them a question, you'll get, one, yeah, I'm fine, or nothing is wrong, whatever. So how can you stay connected enough so that they feel open and willing and wanting to talk?
Yeah, keeping their heart open, keeping their heart soft and open, and making sure that there is that the communication channel isn't broken. We like to use the term, don't we, more connected than the internet. How can we stay more connected with them than the internet, so that our voice of influence is stronger than the influence of their peers or social media? That's the goal. And if that's the goal, then there's some practical things that we do to make sure that connection stays strong.
And I think that expression tells you that it's a high bar, because you know that they're very connected with the internet.
Yeah.
So know that this is not just
it's
a high bar you've got to cross to be more connected than the internet with them.
So then what tips would you give on keeping connection and good communication with your teenage children in particular? What tips can you give us then?
I think it starts with thinking big picture, just trying to understand what this is all about. Where are we going? What are we trying to do? What's the goal here? What's the objective? And I think with a lot of parents, well, I guess I was going to say there are two types of parents, but there are probably multiple types of parents. But if you were to break it down, I think there are those types of parents who are trying to focus on getting the job done, which is grooming the best children. The what, sorry?
Reactive.
I'm thinking more just about grooming the best children, preparing them to be great citizens in the world, to go out and achieve the sort of, what do they call them? The sort of
high achievers,
the alpha parents. Exactly.
All right.
They want to just get the best out of their children. It's a worthy objective. I'm not judging, but it's a certain school of thought. And then there are others who would be much more focused on just having that connection with the child, just wanting I just want the best for you. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. It's not necessarily contradicting the other one, but it's saying
it's a different philosophy.
It's a different philosophy. It's more about the connection than the objective and the outcome. And I think there is, and I guess a lot of the alpha parents don't necessarily think about, or haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about, the long-term connection. Why I say that is, I guess I can put myself in the alpha parent category to some extent. I certainly did how I used to think. Try and get the children to get good grades and driving them to achieve as much as possible. End up running around like a headless chicken to all sorts of after-school activities and schools, and just trying to do everything, when actually you could do all of that and you spend all your time in the car driving from A to B to C to D, but not actually connecting with them and not having a relationship. So it's important to remember that side of things. And I think the big picture is clearly from a godly perspective, what's the Lord's plans for them? Because he knew that child when they were born. He has plans for them. He knows where he's looking to take them. So I think it's spending some time praying about it, asking God, what's the plan for this child? And each child is different.
Versus our plan.
But versus our plan, you might have your own ideas as to this is where I want them to be. I want them to be in true African style. I want this one to be doctor, this one to be lawyer.
Yes, I remember my dad did that to me.
That's not
He wanted me to be an
necessarily.
accountant.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
What's the plan for each child? What's the godly big picture? And then saying, okay, well, if that's what we want to achieve, how do we achieve that? How do I help this child do that and stay connected with
And
them?
also the relationship that you want in terms of big picture, the relationship you want at the end of the day. So we heard Andy Stanley, who is a pastor in the States, a great, a leader of leaders, so to speak. And we heard him say that he and his wife agreed early in their marriage that even though they had pastors' kids, they weren't going to put pressure on them to be perfect kids. He wanted to lead and parent them in a way that when they didn't have to come back home anymore, they wanted to come back home because the relationship was that strong. And we set that as our big picture goal, that whatever happens, we want to treat them in such a way that the relationship is so important to them that they want to hang out with us. They want to come and see us for who we are rather than for what we have and what we can give to them. So that governs the way that we treat them through whatever is going on, where the relationship is really important. Keep the connection.
I was just going to say, when I'm old and gray, but actually it's more when I'm older and grayer and older. But anyway, when I'm like that and sitting in my rocking chair, I want them to come and look for me and say, hey, Dad, how you doing? Not because they have to come, not because they're looking for a handout or they feel some sense of duty or obligation, but because they genuinely want to come and see me.
Yeah.
That's what I want. For me, that's the big picture. That they're successful in doing what it is that God has called them to do, and we have a connection between them. Just those two things, and I'm happy.
Yeah. And part of our role, I suppose, there are two things that we try to do that practically. Rick Warren, who wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, which I think is an amazing book.
Yeah.
So amazing that you've read it.
I've read it like 5, 6 or 7 times. Every time I need a reset in life, I go back to The Purpose-Driven Life. But he talks about understanding our shape, which is our spiritual gifts, our heart, so the things that we're passionate about, our abilities, our personalities, and our experience, and that God uses all of that created on purpose for a purpose. So all of that gets weaved into God's plan for our lives. So as parents, it's our job to help our children discern what their shape is, what are their spiritual gifts, what are they passionate about, what's their heartbeat, what are their abilities, what is their personality, because it'll be different to ours, and how do we help set them on the path God has for them. But a concept that we use to help manage the temperature of the relationship and help keep them close is the concept of the emotional bank account. I'm sure some of the viewers would have heard about this, but we'll just describe it really quickly because it's a really powerful way for understanding how our behavior is landing with somebody else or how their behavior is landing with us and what it's doing to the relationship between us. So you like to talk about the emotional bank account?
I'm happy to. The emotional bank account is it's just a mental record that we each keep of every interaction we have with the people around us. So when you meet somebody new, you set up an emotional bank account with them. Clearly, when you give birth to a child, an emotional bank account is born with that child. And interactions are going backwards and forwards into that account all the time. It's more complicated than that because you will have an emotional bank account for them and they will have one for you. But if we just talk about the concept and just high level, every interaction registers one way or the other. If it's a positive interaction, it's a deposit into the account. It's a cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching every time there's a positive. If it's a negative interaction, it's a withdrawal. It's a shoop, shoop. It's going out of the account. But the balance of the account is the feeling in the relationship. Yeah. So if the relationship feels good, that tells you the balance in the account is in positive territory. Yeah. If things feel scratchy, things feel it's not working so well, you're probably either near zero or in overdraft. So you can have the same conversation with the same person at a different time, and you get a different response. You say, hang on, but we had this conversation before, it was fine. Why? What's the problem now? Their emotional bank account is in a different place. Yeah.
And what's interesting is that when you understand that this emotional bank account thing exists, you can observe in the moment when they start shutting down, or when you've said something that's made them feel on top of the world, or when it's really hurt them. And in that moment, if you become aware of what's happening, you can address things in that moment before they become, you know, hardened, or before distance becomes permanent in the relationship. And importantly, it's not about what you intended, it's about how they've perceived it. So even if you said something, you know, to tease them and to try and be jovial and lighthearted about it, if they didn't like it and it lands badly, you will know in that moment. And in that moment, you can apologize for it and get the temperature in the relationship back to being warm. So the whole idea of the emotional bank account is a very simple but powerful concept for managing the quality of the relationship, managing the temperature of the relationship on purpose every day.
Yeah. And the habits that we share are practical ways to help you manage that emotional bank account and keep it in positive territory.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, just before we come to the habits, one other thing that it's important to recognize is when we have a relationship, especially with children, we assume quite often that because of the level of knowledge and information that they have from
because of Alexa and Siri.
I was going to say,
Alexa and Siri.
You know, in lots of topics, they have more information than we do. I mean, of course, we all have the same access to the internet, but they're on it all the time, looking for things. We kind of assume sometimes that we're talking to an adult that is, you know, the brain of an adult, and actually they're not quite there yet. Their brains are still very much under control. I'm talking about teenagers. I mean, the research has proven it time and time again.
Actually, to the age of 26, research shows. Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. So they know a lot.
Cortex is.
There you go.
Exactly. So they know a lot of information about things that their brain isn't ready to process. And that's where you end up with this half adult, half child kind of response and emotions tumbling out that you can't really predict. You were going to talk about the brain. Right. So as you said, you know, from I think it's kind of 13, 14, could be a bit earlier, the brain is under as much construction. In the teen brain is under as much construction as it was when the child was 5 years old and they were growing rapidly. And the way I've heard it described is the prefrontal cortex, where all the logical, rational decision-making powerhouse exists. That's what's being rewired. And during the teen years, they end up thinking more with the limbic, which is their emotional, irrational, fight, flight, or freeze type brain. So that's why their emotions can seem to swing in huge extremes. They're either very elated or very upset, and a simple question about what do you want for breakfast, and it's like, why are you asking me that? Why don't you know? You know, you just don't understand me. And you think, where on earth is that coming from? And so in our relationship with our children, and with when they become teens in particular and start developing their own personality and their own, you know, direction in life, it's so important for us to just remember that their brain is under construction, so that we can be their stable, like, true north for them, keeping them anchored, keeping them reassured, giving them the space to get it wrong, because they will, and managing our own emotional responses. You know, sometimes we need to give ourselves a timeout.
Yes. So
but to be that stable true north, so that they know that we can build their self-esteem and their assurance through this time of insecurity, while their brain is being rewired and they're not quite sure who they are, or they might respond in a way that they know is so disrespectful and they don't know how to come back from that. We have to be there for them in such an anchored, self-assured way that only God can give us that confidence. But we need to build our level of relationship skills to be able to manage ourselves and them through those years, so that we come out with their self-esteem, their self-confidence, or examples that we've set for them with everything intact.
So in terms of tips, I would say the tips, it's the think big picture and remember about this connection. It's so important to have the connection. Remember that they're on a journey. They ain't there yet. They might look and think tall. I mean, our
They might
teenagers are
think
taller
they
than
are.
us. You know,
They might,
they might think they
exactly,
are.
they
You might
might
think they
think
are.
it. Yeah,
The
yeah.
brains aren't quite there. And then be on purpose about maintaining that connection. Be on purpose about your behaviors. Think about how you're turning up. Be on purpose about it. But that's where we talk about the habits that will help you do that.
Yeah.
But those are three things that I would say. Three tips to maintain that.
Yeah. So you talk about the 4 habits then. You talk about the 4 habits of all successful relationships. So,
Yeah.
so how do they work for parenting then?
Great question, because these are the 4 fundamental habits that we say apply to all relationships. So they work for parents in terms of who the habits they develop themselves and who they become, how they turn up to the relationship as a parent. And it's also habits that you want to model and live out with your children. So if we go through the habits, habit number 1, be curious, not critical, is all about getting to understand fundamental differences and giving people space and grace to be different. Because the challenge is we always assume that everybody thinks and feels and will respond and react like we do. And when they don't, it creates frustration because our expectations are unmet. So if you think of that in the context of children, their different personalities will show up. So for some, they need a tidy bedroom. For some, you can't even see the floor in their bedroom. For some, they need that constant interaction and socializing with others. Other children might like their alone time. For some, they're brilliant with schoolwork and they find that easy. For others, that's not what they're interested in. They'd rather be doing things with their hands. You know, the personality will start to show up in ways that will delight you when it looks like what you expect, or will irritate and frustrate you when it is completely opposite to who you are. But habit 1, be curious, not critical, is about learning to get curious about their differences rather than judging or criticizing or belittling them because they're different from who you are. We like to talk about giving space and grace to let them be, space and grace. And that's both sides. That's you with yourself, that's you with your partner, that's you at work, and that's you as a parent. And it's also about learning to stand strong in your strengths, because everybody has core strengths that are, you know, the gifts that comes with their personality. There'll be weaknesses associated, but the weaknesses exist because you're so good in this area. And our job is to help affirm them in the things that are their strengths and not criticize the weaknesses that are the flip side of the strengths that they bring.
Yeah, and there are lots and lots of things that you
sometimes
can.
even as parents, you can sometimes tend to focus on the things, the weaknesses, especially like you're trying to correct behavior. You're just focusing on that and you forget that there are other things. Is that beautiful part of their personality, you know, that is there for you to enhance, for you to coach, you know, for you to build up in. Yeah,
absolutely.
But we have this vision of what they should be, so we're trying to get them there with the best
yeah.
will in the world. It's the best will in the world. We're not trying to cripple them or anything. We're just trying to get them to be. And that doesn't land so well.
But that's why. So habit 1, be curious, not critical, is the first place to start. When you see differences or things that where they behave or think completely different to you, treasure hunt for the strengths that those differences bring, because they're always strengths in differences.
And celebrate those strengths, and rather than just focus on the bits that we don't like and try and perfect those, but focus on the good things as well. Celebrate those. It's so easy not to do that, to take them for granted. Focus on those. But when the differences manifest and we have unmet expectations, usually what follows is some kind of disagreement or conflict, and that takes us straight into habit 2 territory, because in these conflicts are going to happen. Conflict is inevitable as long as we are living, thinking, feeling human beings with opinions and egos. We're going to have differences. Once they manifest, there's going to be conflict, and depending on how you handle that, that's where the problem is. So conflict itself is not a problem. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's how you handle it that generally is a problem. And the problem comes because, pardon me, many of us handle conflict from a selfish perspective. We don't know what else to do, So we try and get what's best for us. And that's not necessarily what's best for the relationship. And depending on your personality type, you can end up coming out in a crushing way. Because you're so focused on getting what's right and doing what's right for you, you can end up the phrase that we've coined for the habit is be careful, not crushing. Especially in conflict situations, you want to be careful, handle conflict carefully. And so therefore it's about how do you do that? How do you show care in your relationship?
Yeah, how do you treat people well, even through the conflict situation, so that you end up with more understanding, you end up strengthening the relationship rather than damaging the relationship because of how you turn up to conflict. And the way we turn up, self-centered as it is usually influenced by our personality style. So people who are, you know, very kind of strong, dominant personalities, they might come in to win. Those who are very articulate and more creative, they might come in arguing. You know, we have one who could, it's a 2-hour debate anytime there's a conflict situation, just because that's how he's wired. Actually, that's how I'm wired as well. So John's felt the brunt of that. And just knowing that people will turn up to, you know, some will withdraw. Our youngest son doesn't like conflict at all. His temptation will be to withdraw. And we all, and what's the other one? To give in, to yield. All different ways of trying to deal with the conflict in a way that's best suited to me and my personality style. And what our job, it would be careful not crushing, is about learning to discover the approach that's more us-centered, what will work for us, and how can we manage the conflict in a way that we come out with better understanding of each other and of how we'll do life together without hurting each other in the process.
The problem when we show up as who we are naturally is we don't necessarily show up as who we want to be. So really, you want to start thinking about who would you like to be in a conflict situation. It's almost like we all have to-do lists. Okay, well, what's your to-be list? In a conflict situation, what's the person that I will be proud of? When things go badly with the children, have I shouted at them? And then, oh, why did I shout at them? Have I raised my hand? Whatever it happened to be, you know, I'm not judging, but I'm just saying what's been your natural response? Is it something that you're proud of? Because if it isn't, well, what would you be proud of? That's the person that you want to be. That's how you want to train yourself to respond in a conflict situation. And we say it's important to think about 3 things, I guess, when it comes to conflict. If it's going to happen, think about before, during, and after. So before the conflict, like a boxer going into a ring, you don't turn up in the ring all flabby and unprepared. You want to prepare yourself for the conflict. If it's going to happen,
okay, what you're going to say. Think about what you're going to do.
Think about what you're going to say. Think about how you want to be. And there's some things you can do. So one practical thing you can do in that context is set ground rules. Say, okay, these are ground rules. This is ways that these are things that I will do, things that I won't do in a conflict situation. So when the children trigger me for whatever reason, I'm gonna take 5 deep breaths. So I'm gonna count to 20 or whatever before I respond, just to give you some time to process. Because if you just respond initially, it may not be something that you're proud of. So take some time, do what it may be.
Especially if you're really upset, because then you're thinking part of your brain is gone, really. And you're really speaking from an emotional side, and anything and everything, things that you really don't want to say comes out at that point.
So set your ground rules in place, which will allow you to take control of that to some extent. During the conflict, so important to focus on listening very, very carefully. Listen well. Mostly in conflict, most of us, all we're doing is just waiting for the other person to pause, and we're reloading our gun in the meantime. So the moment you pause, boom, I fire back at you. That's what we're doing.
Sometimes you don't even wait.
Exactly. Don't even wait. Just find a great way in. But focus on genuinely listening. Everybody wants to be heard.
Listening to understand.
Everybody wants to be heard. That can almost bring the temperature down straight away. And then after the conflict, very important to focus on reconnecting. Don't just leave it, okay, well, the conflict is over now, well, let's go our separate ways and it'll be fine later. Actually be on purpose about reconnecting. Even if it's, I don't know, let's go out for a drink together, or go and sit down together and chat. Or I don't know if they're coffee drinking age, let's go for a coffee together, whatever it happens to be.
Go for McDonald's,
whatever, go ice cream, but reconnect on purpose. Get that. Don't just leave it. We're emotional human beings. These emotions are funny things. Be on purpose about building them and reconnecting.
And apologize. You know, sometimes as parents, we
So
need to
true.
apologize.
Yep.
And that can be a healing balm for the relationship. And, you know, teach them how to forgive by forgiving, you know, being able to talk about what happened, how you might want to do things differently next time, but let them see your humanity, your vulnerability, and apologize when you don't get it right.
That's role modeling there. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's habits 1 and 2.
That's
Number
habits
3?
number 1 and 2. So habit 3, ask, don't assume. And that's a really chunky habit, because essentially what it's saying is become very clear on what your values are. We all have these core values and beliefs that drive us. So be clear what your core values are. Be clear about the boundaries that you want to set in place for yourself, for your family, for your relationships, and be equipped, be able to have courageous conversations around those deep-seated issues when they get challenged. So those are the things that really help build respect and trust, or break respect and trust. So what are the fundamentals that you are going to be living by that will determine what feels respectful to you, how you expect to be treated or spoken to as a parent, or how they might need to be spoken to, especially as they get into teen years and they become more adult, more independent. You know, how will you respect their boundaries, your boundaries, so that you can keep having conversations around everything, especially the things that might feel like tough issues. It could be around faith, it could be around boyfriends and girlfriends and sex, and what does God say about sex before marriage, or things. You want them to be able to come to you to talk about these value-based, faith-based issues, rather than going somewhere else or feeling like it's too taboo to talk about it. So how do
nothing is taboo. Anything you want to talk about,
yeah,
we're gonna have to talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So habit 3, ask, don't assume. And a key point with habit 3 is you'll know when you've challenged somebody's core values, when you see this kind of visceral gut reaction, a negative reaction where somebody just lashes out at something you've said or done. That's where you need to have a courageous conversation to find out the issue behind the issue, rather than just reacting to their behavior, is to find out what's caused that.
Beneath that behavior.
Because you've trampled on something that's really important to them.
So on that note, something that's really important to me is respect or disrespect. And when I sense disrespect, especially from children or from our children, I'm like, good African man, that doesn't work for me so well. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know.
I think it's a cultural thing.
It could be, but it doesn't work for me so well. So for me, what I've had to learn is think again, big picture, going back to thinking that, what's the long-term relationship that I want with the children? If I respond to everything like that, you know, if I get triggered and I respond badly, that doesn't work so well for the long-term relationship. So thinking big pictures allowed me to choose my battles, but also what I've learned as part of some of the conversations we've had is usually they're not bad kids. So not usually they're not bad kids. They're not bad kids. Usually what they're saying is not that they mean to be disrespectful. It comes out as disrespect, and it's usually, I'm still doing the analysis on it, but usually there is something behind it. It's usually some sort of fear.
Yeah.
They're afraid of something, and it comes out as disrespect. It could be as simple as we've said to them, you know, come off your computer game now, you know, it's time to finish, come and do something. Okay, now it's end. Okay, we're going to switch it off now. And they're afraid that they will either lose they've spent hours working on something, they're going to lose all of that, or they're afraid that their friends might see them going.
They're in some serious conversation
it could
with
also
friends.
be the connection. Perhaps they're thinking and feeling that they're not being understood by you.
Correct. You don't know what it is. You just lay down the law, and they come out and with some response which seems to me as being disrespectful, but that's not their intention. It's just they're afraid of something, and they just don't know how to put it out properly.
Yeah. And so habit 3, ask, don't assume, is getting better at finding out what really matters to people and having heart-to-heart conversations about them, both sides, so that you can build genuine respect and trust in the relationship.
Yeah. And then lastly, habit 4, just to wrap up here. As you see, we can talk all day if you let us. So we have to try and contain it. With habit 4, very quickly, you mentioned it earlier, Karen, when you spoke about us just trying to get it right for them. And sometimes we can end up being critical with our young people, with anybody around us. When people don't do things our way, we say, well, why didn't you do it that way? Can't you see this is the right way? And you can be critical with people. And actually, when you're trying to get the ear of children to get them to listen to you, they're not going to listen to you unless there's a connection there. And part of the articulation of habit 4 is connect before you correct. If you want to correct, you have to connect. We're not saying the only reason to connect is so that you can correct, but you connect for lots of reasons. There's a couple of quotes that we love. So there's a quote by, is it John Maxwell, who said, people don't
Care.
they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Oh, yeah. So
once
true.
they know how much you care, then they're interested.
And
if they don't know how much you care,
they're opened up. They're opening up. It's easier for them to listen to you. Because they feel you have their best interest at heart.
And that's for adults and children. This is not just children, it's for everybody. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care and the heart that you're sharing information with.
And in terms of maintaining the connection, there's another quote, which is another very powerful one, which says, people go where they feel welcomed, but they stay where they feel valued. If you want the people around you to stick around, they have to feel valued. This is as true at work, at home, in life. If you want your kids to stick around, they have to feel valued. If they don't feel valued, they're not going to stick around. If you want your partner to feel valued, to stick around, they have to feel valued. If they don't, it's a thing that us human beings do. We tend to vote with our feet. we will go in this regard, we will go where we feel valued. If somebody else is making us feel valued, if it's our friends making us feel valued, we'll go to them. If it's our, I don't know, whoever it is that's making us feel valued. In the workplace, it's the same thing. As I say, people don't leave organizations, they leave their bosses. If the boss isn't making you feel valued, you'll go to find somebody else who's making you feel valued. We have to make people feel valued on purpose. So you have to understand what it is. We love the work that who was it, Gary Chapman did the work on the 5 love languages. That is such a powerful tool to understand what how each individual feels loved, feels valued, feels appreciated. As Gary Chapman mentions, the default in all of us is to think, well, if this is important to me, it must be important to you, so I'll do that. He said, no, forget about that. That's interesting, but find out what's important to you, my child. What's your love language, appreciation language, value language, and speak that. That's going back to the emotional bank account. That's how you make deposits into their emotional bank account.
So it's worth just saying the 5 really quickly. So some people, as Gary Chapman said, some people value words. They like hearing words of affirmation. You're a great person to be around. You're wonderful heart. You are gifted in this way, just things that thank you for what you did. They like hearing it. Others like spending time, where time together one-on-one is vital. Others really value a tangible expression of love. You saw a flower, you brought it to them. They like this particular drink, you give them a gift. With others, it is, so we've done words, time, gifts, there's touch. Just a hug can calm them down, a pat on the shoulder, holding hands, just communicates love in powerful ways. And the 5th one is acts of service, doing things for them or with them, or things that they would have been their job. And if we figure out what our child's love language is, we can be on purpose about putting deposits into their emotional bank account by communicating the I love you, I value you, I appreciate you in ways that they hear it the loudest. And whatever we do, our job is to keep them so connected, to affirm them so much, to build their self-esteem, to let them know we delight in them, that they'll want to stay connected with us and they'll value our inputs and our influence in their lives, because they know that we care more than anybody else about them and who they are.
And they'll be willing to and to actually adopt your beliefs and your values and even your faith, which is so important.
Yeah.
Because the connection is open. It's almost like you now have permission to speak into their lives.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
before that, you didn't have permission because there's no connection.
Yeah.
That's what opens the door.
Yeah.
So why the 4 habits work is really going back to the emotional bank account. Habits 1 and 2 are all about helping us minimize some of the things that we're doing that are landing badly unintentionally. When you develop those habits, you stop doing some of those things. And habits 3 and 4 about doing things on purpose, like speaking their love language, on purpose, making deposits. And when you do both those together, minimize the withdrawals and maximize the deposits, together you're taking into further and further into positive territory. And that's how you maintain the connection, and that's how you have strong, healthy relationships and keep them alive.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I think you're right. I could actually sit here and listen forever.
Well, that's why we wrote the book, to share some of these thoughts. We're all in the book.
Now your book and all your other resources, there's a link at this video below. So please access this link and you'll be able to get the book, which is due in when
on the
next Wednesday,
12th of May. So depending on when you're
cannot wait.
Yeah.
They say, they say, it's available at all good booksellers near you, online, everywhere. The whole
So we have a link that will take you straight to the book and then to your website and all your other resources. So thank you so much, Andrea and Jon, for this session. But before you go, this is the fun part, really. We ask all our speakers to give us a take-home activity, something that we can do now. I know you've shared quite a lot. So what would be your take-home activity for us as parents?
Something to do.
So there would be the 2 things, for parents, we would say, from the things that we've shared, from what you've heard, take 5 minutes, take a moment to think about what you're not doing that you'd like to start doing now as you relate to your child or your children. What are you doing that clearly isn't working, that from what we've said, you realize, okay, I need to stop that so that I don't unintentionally damage the relationship? What are things that you're doing, but you might have heard a way to tweak it so that it lands better? So something that you might want to change. And what are you doing that's really working well, that you want to do it with confidence that this is the right thing to be doing? So something to start, something to stop, something to change, and something to continue. That's for parents to decide. And an activity for parent to child or parent to children, how about just asking them 2 questions? One is, what am I doing that's frustrating you, that's really not landing well? Let's talk about that. And what am I doing that's making you feel really valued and appreciated, so that you can do more of that? That would be a great conversation. Children will tell you if you take the time to ask them.
I'm going to do it. And I know that my teenage kids are going to tell me straight away, first of all, what am I not doing well? So I think it's an activity that we can all do. So here we go. Please do this take-home activity and write your experiences. Write it down on this platform. Let's share together. Let's learn from each other's experiences. And I like I say all the time, sometimes it takes a community really to raise children. So if we get that chat going, we'll be able to see and learn from everyone that we're not alone, actually. We're not alone in the parenting journey. Yeah.
That's right. We're not alone. We're all going through.
Roll up your sleeves and be prepared to hear some tough words
some
back
truth.
when you ask some truth, when you ask different questions. But that's how you grow. That's how you grow and improve. Asking the questions, as they say, ask, don't assume. Habit number 3, just the assumptions that are causing lots and lots of problems. Better to have the conversation, get it out there, talk about it, and then at least you can move forward.
And you keep your heart open.
Build that connection once again.
Absolutely.
So thank you once again, and thank you all for being a part of this session, and to have a lovely day. And thank you, Jon and Andrea. God bless you.
Most
wonderful.
Welcome. Bless you too, Sharon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.